The transport ship landed on Varus Prime just as the twin suns began to set. Molly Reeves stood near the window and watched the purple sky turn orange. She had never seen a sky with two suns before. She had never left Earth before today. She was 17 years old. She had grown up in a small town in Montana, where the biggest excitement was the county fair every summer. Now, she was standing on an alien planet, about to enter the most famous military academy in the known galaxy. The Galactic Coalition Academy trained the best soldiers from hundreds of different species. They had been doing this for thousands of years. In all that time, they had never accepted a human student. Humans were too new to the galaxy, too primitive, too weak, but things had changed. Earth had finally earned a single seat in the Coalition, after 50 years of negotiations. The Coalition agreed to accept one human cadet as a sign of good faith. They held a competition on Earth, and Molly won. She was the fastest, the smartest, and the most determined of all the candidates. None of that mattered to the aliens waiting for her inside. Molly walked down the ramp and into the Academy's main hall. The ceiling was so high she could barely see it. Strange lights floated in the air, without any wires holding them up. Hundreds of cadets from dozens of species stood in neat rows, waiting for the orientation ceremony to begin. She saw the Velnorians first. They were tall and thin, with forearms and skin that shimmered like metal. They moved with perfect grace, every gesture smooth and precise. Next to them stood the Kreeth, massive creatures covered in thick natural armor. Each one was at least 8 feet tall, and probably weighed as much as a small car. Behind them, she spotted the Novali, slender beings with large dark eyes. She had read about them. They could see into the future, just a few seconds ahead, but enough to make them deadly in combat. And then there was Molly, 5'6", brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail. No extra arms, no armor, no psychic powers. Just a girl from Montana. The other cadets stared at her as she found her place in line. Some of them whispered to each other. A few of them laughed. Molly kept her eyes forward and her face calm. She had expected this. Commander Zorath walked onto the stage at the front of the hall. He was a Kreeth, even bigger than the others, with scars covering his gray-armored skin. His voice was deep and hard when he spoke. "Welcome to the Academy," he said. "You have been chosen because your species believes you are the best. Here, you will prove whether that belief is correct. Many of you will fail. Some of you will quit. A few of you will die in training accidents. This is the way it has always been." He paused and looked out at the crowd. His eyes stopped on Molly for just a moment before moving on. "Today, you will receive your training weapons. These tools will be your companions for the next 3 years. You will sleep with them, eat with them, and learn to use them until they become extensions of your own bodies." Officers began moving through the rows, handing out equipment. Molly watched as the cadets around her received their weapons. The Velnorians got plasma staffs that glowed with blue energy. The Kreeth received massive kinetic shields that could block almost any attack. The Novali were given psionic amplifiers, small devices that boosted their natural mental abilities. Each weapon was designed specifically for each species. The Coalition had spent centuries perfecting these tools. Commander Zorath himself walked toward Molly. The hall grew quiet as everyone watched. He stopped in front of her and looked down. His eyes showed nothing but cold assessment. "The human," he said. The word sounded like an insult. Molly looked up at him without flinching. "Yes, sir." Zorath turned to one of his officers. "What do we have for the human?" The officer checked a tablet and shook his head. "Nothing was prepared, Commander. There are no human-specific training weapons in our inventory." A murmur ran through the crowd. Zorath raised one massive hand, and the hall fell silent again. "No matter," he said. He walked to a supply crate near the wall and reached inside. When he turned back to Molly, he was holding a simple wooden stick. It was about 3 feet long, smooth and plain, with no technology or special features of any kind. "This is used by the cleaning crews to practice formation drills," Zorath said. "It should suffice for a human." He held out the stick. The hall erupted in laughter. Velnorians clicked their teeth in amusement. Kreeth rumbled with deep chuckles. Even the usually calm Novali allowed themselves small smiles. Molly reached out and took the stick. She did not complain. She did not argue. She did not show any anger or shame on her face. She simply took the stick and held it in both hands, feeling its weight, testing its balance. It was solid wood, probably from some alien tree. It had a good weight to it. The surface was worn smooth from years of use. Zorath watched her reaction with interest. He had expected tears, perhaps, or anger, or a demand for proper equipment. Instead, the human girl just stood there, examining her new weapon as if it were the most valuable thing in the room. "You have something to say?" Zorath asked. Molly looked up at him. "No, sir. Thank you for the weapon, sir." Zorath stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked back to the stage without another word. The orientation ceremony continued, but Molly barely heard it. She was too busy thinking. Everyone in this room had underestimated her. They saw a small human girl with a wooden stick, and they thought they knew everything about her. They were wrong. Molly had spent her whole life being underestimated. She was the smallest kid in her school, but she had won every fight she ever been in. She was from a poor family, but she had earned the highest grades in her state. She came from a species that had only discovered space travel a few hundred years ago, but she had beaten thousands of other candidates to earn her place here. The stick felt good in her hands. It was simple. It was honest. It had no fancy technology to rely on, no special powers to fall back on. If she was going to succeed with this weapon, it would be because of her own skill and nothing else. That night, in her small room in the cadet barracks, Molly began to practice. She moved through the forms her grandfather had taught her when she was a child, back when they used to play with branches in the backyard. She had not thought about those lessons in years, but her body remembered every movement. Outside her window, the twin suns had set, and strange stars filled the sky. She was alone on an alien planet, surrounded by beings who thought she was worthless. Molly smiled and kept practicing. She would show them what a human could do. Combat training began 1 week after orientation. Molly had spent every free moment practicing with her stick, learning its weight and reach until it felt like part of her own arm. The other cadets had spent the same time laughing at her whenever she walked past. She did not mind. Let them laugh. Laughter would not help them in the arena. The training facility was a massive dome filled with holographic projectors and energy emitters. The instructors could create any battlefield they wanted inside. Today, the exercise was simple. Cadets would enter the arena one at a time. Holographic enemies would appear and fire low-powered plasma rounds at them. The goal was to survive for 5 minutes. The plasma rounds would not kill anyone. They were designed for training, but they would hurt. A lot. And every hit would be recorded and counted against the cadet's score. Instructor Tael ran the exercise. She was a Novali, tall and graceful, with eyes that seemed to look through everything they saw. She had served in 3 wars and killed more enemies than most cadets could count. She watched the first group of cadets enter the arena with a bored expression on her face. The Velnorians went first. They were impressive to watch. Their 4 arms moved in perfect coordination, spinning their plasma staffs to deflect incoming fire while simultaneously striking at the holographic enemies. Most of them lasted the full 5 minutes with only a few hits. The Kreth went next. They did not bother dodging. They simply raised their kinetic shields and walked forward through the storm of plasma fire. The rounds splashed harmlessly against their defenses. Some of them even managed to destroy a few enemies along the way. The Novali were the most elegant. They saw the attacks coming before they happened, stepping aside from plasma rounds that had not even been fired yet. They moved like dancers, always 1 step ahead of danger. Then it was Molly's turn. She walked into the arena holding her wooden stick. The observation deck above the arena was filled with cadets who had come to watch. Word had spread that the human girl was about to try the combat drill. Nobody wanted to miss it. Instructor Tael looked down at her. "Cadet Reeves, are you ready?" "Yes, ma'am." "You understand that you may request a shield or other defensive equipment? Given your species' limitations, no one would think less of you." Molly shook her head. "The stick is fine. ma'am. Tail's large dark eyes showed no emotion. Very well. Begin the exercise. The arena changed around Molly. Walls and barriers appeared from nowhere, creating a maze of corridors and open spaces. Red lights blinked on as the holographic enemies powered up. There were 20 of them, positioned all around the arena, each one armed with a plasma projector. A horn sounded. The exercise had begun. The enemies opened fire. Plasma rounds streaked through the air from every direction. Blue bolts of energy crossed and crisscrossed, filling the arena with deadly light. There was nowhere to hide. Nowhere to run. The attack had been designed to overwhelm, to test how cadets performed under impossible pressure. Molly moved. She did not think about what she was doing. She did not plan her movements or calculate the angles of the incoming fire. She simply let her body do what it knew how to do. She stepped left, and a plasma round passed through the space where her head had been. She ducked, and another round flew over her shoulder. She spun and twisted and leaned, her body flowing through the gaps in the storm of fire like water flowing through rocks in a river. Her stick moved with her, not blocking the rounds but keeping her balanced, helping her shift her weight from one foot to the other. It was not a weapon right now. It was a tool for movement, an extension of her body that helped her stay in motion. On the observation deck, the laughter had stopped. Instructor Tyle leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the human girl below. She had seen thousands of cadets go through this exercise. She had never seen anything like this. The Velnorians were precise. The Kreth were strong. The Novali could see the future. But this human girl was doing something different. She was not predicting the attacks or blocking them or overpowering them. She was simply not being where they were. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Then 3. The holographic enemies increased their rate of fire. The arena filled with even more plasma rounds, turning the air blue with deadly energy. Molly kept moving. She dropped to the ground and rolled as a wave of fire passed over her. She jumped back to her feet and sidestepped 3 rounds that would have hit her chest. She bent backward at an impossible angle as a bolt passed inches from her nose. Her face was calm. Her breathing was steady. She looked almost bored. 4 minutes. The other cadets on the observation deck had gone completely silent. Even the Kreth, who rarely showed interest in anything, were watching with wide eyes. 5 minutes. The horn sounded. The exercise was over. Molly stood in the center of the arena, her stick resting on her shoulder. She was not breathing hard. She was not sweating. She looked exactly the same as she had when she walked in. The holographic display above the arena showed her results. Time survived, 5 minutes. Hits taken, 0. 0. No cadet in the history of the Academy had ever completed the basic combat drill without taking a single hit. Not even the Novali, with their ability to see the future, had achieved a perfect score. Instructor Tail's voice came over the speakers. Cadet Reeves, report to the observation deck. Molly walked out of the arena and climbed the stairs to where the instructors waited. The other cadets made room for her, stepping back as she passed. They looked at her differently now. The laughter was gone from their eyes. Tael stood with her arms crossed, studying Molly like a scientist studying a strange new specimen. Explain what you did in there, she said. Molly shrugged. I moved. Ma'am, that is not an explanation. No human has the reflexes to dodge plasma fire. Your species' reaction time is far too slow. What technology are you using? What enhancement? No technology, ma'am. No enhancement. I just moved. Tael was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out with her mind, using her Novali abilities to scan Molly's thoughts and memories. What she found there made her take a step back, in surprise. There was no trick, no hidden technology. The human girl had simply felt where the danger was and moved away from it. Her body had reacted before her conscious mind even knew what was happening. It was not prediction, it was not calculation, it was something older, something deeper, instinct. Tael looked at the human girl with new eyes. Return to your barracks, Cadet Reeves. We will speak more about this later. Molly nodded and walked away, her stick still resting on her shoulder. Behind her, The observation deck erupted in whispered conversations. The instructors gathered together, talking quickly in voices too low for the cadets to hear. Something had changed today. The human girl had shown them something they had never seen before, and they did not know whether to be impressed or afraid. Word spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. By the next morning, every cadet knew about the human girl who had dodged plasma fire without getting hit. Some of them did not believe it. They said the recordings must have been faked. They said the instructors had made the exercise easier for her. They said there was no way a primitive human could outperform species that had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Others believed it, and they were angry. Cyrith was one of the angry ones. He was a Velnorian, tall and proud, from a family that had produced warriors for 20 generations. He had trained since childhood to master the plasma staff. He had entered the academy, expecting to be the best in his class. Instead, everyone was talking about the human girl. He found Molly in the mess hall during the midday meal. She was sitting alone at a small table in the corner, eating something that looked like green soup. Her wooden stick leaned against the wall beside her. Cyrith walked over and slammed his 4 hands down on the table. The bowl of soup jumped and nearly spilled. "Human," he said. His voice was loud enough for everyone in the mess hall to hear. "I want to know what trick you used yesterday." Molly looked up at him. She did not seem surprised or scared. "No trick. Lies." Cyrith leaned closer. "Humans cannot move like that. Your species is slow and weak. You have no special abilities. You must have used some kind of technology, some hidden device that we cannot detect." Molly put down her spoon. "I used nothing. I just moved. Prove it." Cyrith stepped back and crossed all 4 of his arms. "Fight me. Here. Now. No plasma. No holographics. Real combat. If you beat me, I will believe you. If I beat you, you will admit that you cheated." The mess hall went silent. Every cadet turned to watch. Even the servers stopped what they were doing. Molly thought about it for a moment. Then she stood up and grabbed her stick. "Okay," she said. The cadets cleared a space in the center of the mess hall. Someone moved the tables out of the way. Cyrith took his position on one side of the open area. His plasma staff held ready. The blue energy that usually glowed along its length was turned off. This would be a fight with the staff itself, not its power. Molly stood on the other side, holding her wooden stick in both hands. She looked calm, relaxed, almost sleepy. "Whenever you are ready," she said. Cyrith attacked. He was fast. His 4 arms moved in patterns that had taken him years to master. The staff spun and thrust and slashed, coming at Molly from multiple angles at once. Any normal opponent would have been overwhelmed in seconds. Molly was not there. Every time the staff came toward her, she had already moved. She stepped left when he swung right. She ducked when he thrust high. She leaned back when he swept low. Her movements were small and efficient, just enough to avoid the attack and no more. She did not fight back. She did not try to hit him. She simply kept moving, kept dodging, kept being somewhere other than where his staff was trying to go. 1 minute passed. Cyrith's attacks grew faster and more desperate. He was using every technique he knew, every combination he had ever learned. None of them worked. 2 minutes. He was starting to breathe hard. The plasma staff felt heavy in his hands. Sweat was forming on his metallic skin. 3 minutes. He stumbled. Just for a moment. And Molly could have hit him then. But she did not. She just stepped aside and waited for him to recover. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Cyrith's arms were burning. His lungs felt like they were on fire. He could barely lift the staff anymore. Finally, after almost 15 minutes, he collapsed to his knees. The staff clattered to the floor beside him. He looked up at the human girl, who was standing in front of him without a single mark on her body. She was not even breathing hard. Molly reached down and offered him her hand. "Good fight," she said. Cyrith stared at her hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took it. She helped him to his feet. "How?" he asked. His voice was weak and confused. How do you do that? Molly thought about how to explain it. On Earth, she said, humans were not always at the top of the food chain. For millions of years, we were prey. Everything wanted to eat us. Lions, wolves, bears, snakes. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. The only thing that kept us alive was our ability to sense danger and get out of the way. She tapped her head. It is built into us. Our brains learn to read the smallest signs of attack. A twitch of a muscle, a shift in weight, a change in breathing. We feel the danger coming before it arrives. We do not think about it. We do not plan it. Our bodies just know. Cirith shook his head slowly. But that was millions of years ago. Surely you have evolved beyond such primitive instincts. No, Molly said. We have not. We have just learned to use them in new ways. When a human is in danger, really in danger, something inside us wakes up. Something old, something that remembers what it was like to be hunted. Instructor Tael's voice came from behind them. She is telling the truth. Everyone turned. Tael was standing in the doorway of the mess hall, watching them. I scanned her mind yesterday, Tael continued, walking toward them. I looked for technology, for enhancement, for any kind of trick. I found nothing. What she has is purely biological. Her brain processes threat information faster than conscious thought. Her body reacts before her mind even knows there is danger. Tael stopped in front of Molly and looked down at her with those large, dark eyes. My people can see a few seconds into the future. It gives us an advantage in combat. But what you have is different. You do not see the future. You feel the present more deeply than any species I have ever encountered. Is that good? Molly asked. Tael was quiet for a moment. It is dangerous, she said finally. Not for you. For everyone else. She turned and walked out of the mess hall without another word. Cirith picked up his staff and looked at Molly. The anger was gone from his eyes now. In its place was something that might have been respect. I apologize for calling you a cheater, he said. Molly smiled. Apology accepted. Do you want to train together sometime? I could use a sparring partner. Cirith stared at her. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. I would like that. Human. I would like that very much. They shook hands, and something changed in the mess hall that day. The other cadets looked at Molly differently after that. She was still the human, with the wooden stick. But now they understood that the stick was not a joke. It was a warning. 3 months passed. Molly trained every day, pushing her body harder than she ever had before. She sparred with Cirith, who had become a good friend. She learned from instructor Tael, who had taken a special interest in her abilities. She even earned the grudging respect of some of the Kreth cadets, who admired anyone who could take a beating and keep going. She still carried the wooden stick. Commander Zoreth had offered her a real weapon twice now. Both times, she had refused. The stick felt right in her hands. It had become part of who she was. Then the alarm started screaming. It was the middle of the night. Molly was in her room, doing push-ups before bed, when the red lights began flashing and the sirens filled the air. She grabbed her stick and ran into the corridor. Other cadets were pouring out of their rooms, confused and scared. Nobody knew what was happening. The alarms had never gone off like this before. Commander Zorath's voice came over the speakers, but it was broken and full of static. All cadets. Shelter in place. Attack. Hollow Suns. Not a drill. The Hollow Suns. Molly had heard of them. They were a pirate faction that operated in the outer regions of Coalition space. They attacked ships, raided colonies, and killed anyone who got in their way. They were ruthless and well-armed and had no fear of death, and somehow, they had gotten past the orbital defenses and landed on the Academy grounds. Explosions shook the building. Molly heard plasma fire in the distance, followed by screams. The security forces were fighting the pirates. But from the sound of it, they were losing. She started running toward the sounds of battle, but then she heard something else. Voices. Young voices. Coming from the eastern wing of the building, Molly changed direction and ran toward the voices. She found them in a classroom near the end of the corridor. A group of first-year cadets, barely old enough to be at the academy. There were 8 of them, huddled together in the corner of the room. A young Kreth named Dorvac was trying to look brave, but his hands were shaking. A Navali girl named Liss was crying silently, her psychic powers too undeveloped to be of any use. "What are you doing here?" Molly asked as she burst through the door. Dorvac looked up at her with desperate eyes. "We were in night class when the alarm started. Our instructor told us to stay here, but then he went to help fight and never came back. We heard shooting in the corridor. We did not know what to do." Molly looked out the window. She could see fires burning across the academy grounds. Dropships with the hollow sun symbol were landing near the main building. This was a full invasion, not just a raid. "We need to get to the shelter bunkers," she said. "Can you all walk?" Quote. They nodded, even though some of them looked like they could barely stand. "Stay behind me," Molly said. "Stay close. Do not run unless I tell you to run. Do not hide unless I tell you to hide. Trust me, and I will get you out of here." She led them into the corridor. The lights were flickering now, and smoke was starting to fill the air. Somewhere nearby, she heard the heavy footsteps of armored boots. "Pirates." Molly held up her hand, and the cadets stopped. She pressed herself against the wall and looked around the corner. 6 pirates were walking toward them. They wore black armor covered in spikes and skulls. They carried plasma rifles that glowed with deadly red light. They were laughing about something, probably the destruction they had caused. They had not seen her yet. Molly turned back to the cadets. "Stay here," she whispered. "Do not move until I come back for you." Before any of them could argue, she stepped around the corner and walked toward the pirates. The first pirate saw her and raised his rifle. "Well, look at this. A little human with a stick." "Are you lost, child?" Molly did not answer. She kept walking toward them. The pirate aimed his rifle at her chest. "Stop right there, or I will burn a hole through you." Molly kept walking. The pirate fired. The plasma bolt streaked toward Molly's heart. At the last moment, she stepped to the side, and the bolt passed by her shoulder close enough to feel its heat. She did not slow down. She did not stop. The other pirates opened fire. The corridor filled with red light as bolt after bolt flew toward the human girl. None of them hit her. She moved through the plasma fire like a ghost. Left, right, duck, spin, lean. Every shot missed her by inches. Every attack found only empty air, and then she was among them. Her stick cracked against the first pirate's wrist, and his rifle clattered to the floor. She spun and drove the end of the stick into the second pirate's throat. He went down, gasping for breath. The third pirate tried to grab her, but she ducked under his arms and swept his legs out from under him. The fourth and fifth pirates backed away, fear in their eyes. They had never seen anything like this. They fired wildly, desperately. But Molly was already moving. She was between them before they could adjust their aim. 2 quick strikes, and they were both on the ground. The last pirate turned and ran. Molly threw her stick like a spear. It hit him in the back of the knees, and he fell face first onto the floor. She walked over, picked up her stick, and hit him once more on the back of the head. He stopped moving. 6 pirates. 15 seconds. All of them down. Molly was not even breathing hard. She walked back to where the cadets were hiding. Their eyes were wide with shock. Little Liss had stopped crying and was staring at Molly like she was looking at a god. "Come on," Molly said. "We need to keep moving." They encountered more pirates on the way to the bunkers. Each time, Molly told the cadets to hide. Each time, she walked forward to meet the enemy alone. Each time, she came back without a scratch, leaving unconscious bodies behind her. By the time they reached the bunker, she had defeated 12 more pirates. Some of them had been in groups of 4 or 5. It did not matter. They could not hit her. They could not touch her. They could not even slow her down. The bunker doors opened, and Instructor Tyel was waiting inside with a group of other cadets and staff. Her eyes went wide when she saw Molly leading the first years to safety. "Cadet Reeves, are you injured?" "No, ma'am." "The cadets?" "All safe, ma'am." Tyel looked past her at the corridor, where smoke and the distant sounds of fighting still filled the air. "How many hostiles did you encounter?" "Well," Molly thought about it. 18, ma'am. Maybe 20. I lost count." "And you defeated them all? With that stick?" "Yes, ma'am." Tyel was silent for a long moment. Then she stepped aside and let them into the bunker. Coalition reinforcements arrived 2 hours later. They found the eastern wing secured and 23 pirates unconscious or disabled throughout the corridors. Every single one of them had been taken down by blunt force trauma. When they asked who had done this, the first-year cadets all pointed at the human girl sitting quietly in the corner of the bunker, the human girl with the wooden stick. The days after the attack were chaos. Coalition investigators arrived by the dozens. Politicians came from across the galaxy to make speeches and promise justice. Reporters swarmed the academy, desperate for any story they could find, and every single one of them wanted to talk about the human girl. Molly tried to avoid the attention. She did not want to be famous. She had only done what needed to be done. But the story had already spread too far to stop. A human cadet, armed with nothing but a wooden stick, had walked through plasma fire and defeated 23 armed pirates without getting hit once. It was impossible. It was unbelievable. And yet, multiple witnesses had seen it happen. The Hollow Suns had lost more than just soldiers that night. They had lost their reputation. A pirate faction that could be beaten by a single human girl with a cleaning tool was not a faction that anyone needed to fear. Commander Zorath was in the medical bay, recovering from wounds he had received during the first wave of the attack. He had fought bravely, holding off 6 pirates to give the younger cadets time to escape. But he had paid a heavy price. His natural armor was cracked in several places, and his left arm was badly burned. He had asked to see Molly 3 times. Twice, she had been too busy with investigators and reporters. On the 3rd day, she finally came to visit him. The medical bay was quiet and clean. Machines hummed softly as they monitored Zorath's vital signs. He was lying in a bed that had been specially made for his massive size, his gray body covered with bandages and healing patches. He looked up when Molly walked in. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. "Sit," he said finally, gesturing to a chair beside his bed. Molly sat down. Her wooden stick was with her, as always, leaning against the wall within easy reach. "I gave you that stick as an insult," Zorath said. His voice was weak but steady. "I wanted to humiliate you. I wanted to show everyone that humans do not belong in this academy." "I know," Molly said. "I understood that from the beginning. You never complained. You never demanded better equipment. You never asked for fair treatment." "Why?" Molly thought about the question. "Because the stick was not the problem," she said. "The problem was how people saw me. If I had demanded a real weapon, they would have found some other way to look down on me. The only way to change their minds was to show them what I could do with what I had." Zorath nodded slowly. His eyes moved to the stick, leaning against the wall. "You could have asked for a proper weapon at any time after the first combat drill. Instructor Tyel told me about your performance. After that, no one would have denied you." "I could have," Molly agreed. "But by then, the stick had become something more. It was not just a tool anymore. It was a statement." A statement of what? That weapons do not make warriors. That the greatest strength comes from inside, not outside. That humans do not need fancy technology or special powers to be dangerous. Zorath was quiet for a long time. The machines beside his bed beeped softly in the silence. "My people measure strength by what we can destroy," he said finally. "The bigger the enemy we can crush, the stronger we are. The Velnorians measure strength by how many things they can do at once. The Novali measure strength by how far they can see into the future." He turned his head to look directly at Molly. "What do humans measure?" It was a question Molly had thought about many times since coming to the academy. She had watched the other species and learned how they viewed the world. She had compared their values to the values she had grown up with on Earth. Survival, she said. We measure what we can endure, what we can adapt to, what we can overcome. She leaned forward in her chair. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy, we know that. We are not the fastest or the smartest or the most talented. We have no special abilities that make us stand out. But we are still here. We have always been here. Every challenge that came our way, every disaster, every enemy, we found a way to survive it. That is what we are proud of. Not what we can destroy, but what we can live through. Zorath stared at her. Something was changing in his eyes. The cold assessment that had been there on the first day was gone. In its place was something warmer, something that might have been respect. He reached under his pillow and pulled out a small case. He opened it and showed her what was inside. It was a combat blade, sleek and deadly, with the Coalition military symbol engraved on the handle. This is a standard-issue weapon for Coalition officers, he said. I would like you to have it. A proper weapon for a proper soldier. Molly looked at the blade. It was beautiful. It was deadly. It was everything she could have asked for back on her first day at the academy. She took the case and examined the blade carefully. Then she closed the case and set it aside on the table. Thank you, Commander, she said. I will treasure this gift. But I think I will keep using the stick for now. At least until someone gives me a reason not to. She picked up the wooden stick and rested it on her shoulder. Zorath watched her, and slowly, a smile spread across his scarred face. It was the first time she had ever seen him smile. You are a strange species, humans, he said. We hear that a lot. Molly stood up and walked toward the door. Before she left, she turned back to look at the commander. Get better soon, sir. The academy needs you, and the galaxy needs more humans like you, Cadet Reeves. I think we did not understand what we were inviting when we gave Earth a seat in the Coalition. Molly smiled. No, sir, I do not think you did. She walked out of the medical bay and into the corridor. The twin suns were shining through the windows, filling the academy with warm light. Cadets moved past her, some of them nodding with respect, others stopping to stare. She was no longer the joke of the academy. She was no longer the primitive human with the cleaning stick. She was Molly Reeves, the girl who walked through plasma fire, the cadet who protected the helpless, the warrior who needed no weapon but the one she made for herself. Somewhere out in the galaxy, the hollow suns were licking their wounds and planning revenge. Other enemies were watching from the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. The universe was dangerous and cruel, and full of beings who wanted to destroy everything she cared about. Molly was not afraid. She had a wooden stick and a million years of survival instinct running through her veins. Let them come. Let them all come. She would be ready. The universe was about to learn something that Earth had known for a very long time. It was not the weapon that made a warrior dangerous. It was not the technology, or the special powers, or the natural abilities. It was the human holding them. And humans never stopped fighting.